Welcome back to another episode of Gridiron and Growth with Ryan Harris and myself. Today, it is just us, and these are going to be episodes. We're going to do these episodes frequently in terms of just asking us questions in terms of leadership, performance, mastery, our time in the NFL, and just what we are overall seeing, where we can actually give a great opinion and give great feedback in terms of our opinion. And today we're going to start with this question right here, and then we'll dive deeper into a more deeper topic in terms of the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. But Carl asked this question in terms of there's 18 NFL teams heading into the 2024 offseason at the completion of the regular season. Imagine you were in the leadership position at the Denver Broncos. What specific things would you do or change in the next 7 months to reposition the team for a winning season next year? Ryan.
Number one, you got to get a number one receiver. Cortland Sutton had 10 touchdowns on the season, career high. He looks very different than Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. You don't have that speed. You don't have that guy. You need to get that guy. And I know from a lineman, you have to have speed to take that safety out of the box. Not only take him out of the box, keep his eyes in the backfield when you, in fact, are running the football. Now, offensive line was an issue with pressures. At one point in the season, quarterback was under pressure 40% of the dropbacks. That can't happen. And then you have to get some pass rushers. This is a league dictated by quarterbacks, and the number one way to affect that is to get some pass rushers that can get after it. I think Nick Benito has done a good job growing up, becoming a pro, had a really good year for himself, and he's different than a Khalil Mack. He's different than some of the other marquee Max Crosby defensive ends. So you have to get key players in key positions that exemplify the speed and talent that the rest of the NFL, who's in the playoffs, has on their roster. Benny, if you're in charge over there at the Broncos facility, what are some moves you're making this offseason to change things?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get a receiver. I need a home run hitter, whether that's in the backfield or that's on the outside position. When I think about playing, I played in Sean's offense in 2020, and our offense was kind of stacked. I mean, if Sean has his way, and he will have his way in terms of building this roster, then he will get his weapons. And the offense that I played on in 2020, Jared Cook was the receiving tight end. We had Michael Thomas, who was the top receiver at the time. We had Emmanuel Sanders, who we both played with in Denver. And then we had Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray. And then we had Deontay Harris, who just returned a 96-yard punt return against the Dolphins, who plays for the Bills. So we had receivers literally all over the place and weapons all over the place. So that's the one thing that I'll see Sean, and if I was Sean or George Payton, in terms of building this roster, I need a couple of home run hitters. I need people that are going to put the fear into another defense. And then I always go to pass rushers right after that. You know, the offense sells tickets, that defense and those pass rushers will win you those close games and help you win championships. Who is going to sack the quarterback? We need pass rushers. We have Pat Surtain in terms of a lockdown corner, and Justice Simmons, top three safety in the league, if not number one. So shout out to him. You know, but it definitely, you know, if Russell Wilson is still here, then you have to find him some weapons and some receivers. But the question is, will he still be here? And then how are you thinking about the quarterback position now? And let's actually just dive into the Sean Payton, Russell Wilson situation.
The tough part about the Sean Payton, Russell Wilson situation is financially it doesn't make sense. And then in the locker room, it doesn't make sense. I mean, hats off to Jarrett Stidham playing in a tough situation, but you could tell a difference in the accuracy and the ability between a Russell Wilson and a Jarrett Stidham. Now, the question is can ownership eat $80 million about that, of which they'll have to pay out if Russell Wilson's not on the contract? And if you're Russell Wilson, you want out. You want to be at a place where you feel welcome and where you feel like you can end your career. So I look at a team like the Atlanta Falcons or the Commanders. Those are two teams that if I'm the GM at those teams, I'm saying, hey, Russ, if you're free, like, let's talk. We want you to come on over. So it's just a strange situation. And even the explanation that you wanted to have a spark for the team, I understood that at the time. And Benny, you and I know sometimes you got to get a player out of the field to make them realize what they can do. I mean, that happened to me in my career. I don't stand on the sidelines like, man, I can work so much harder to stay in the game. I think Russell Wilson has had those moments and those feelings. This is the first time in his career he was benched. It has an effect on a player to bring out more production. The question to me is can Sean Payton repair it and somehow keep Russell Wilson there and create a productive offense? That would be the best of both worlds, in my opinion. When you look, Benny, at the Russell Wilson, Broncos, and Sean Payton situation, what jumps out to you?
Number one, from a business perspective, I think it was business. I think looking at it, and I think Ryan Clark on ESPN talked about it, the communication style for Sean wasn't the best. So, and I know his communication style, especially on game day, can be a little hectic, to say the least. But yeah, the communication style could have been a lot better. But one thing I did appreciate, and what I appreciate just about life now and business now, is that Sean didn't run away from a tough conversation. Russell Wilson is your highest paid player. He's one of your best players on your team. Sean did not run away from the situation in terms of talking to his player or talking to the quarterback in terms of his level and his standards. If you're making that amount of money, you want better play out of the quarterback. I don't know that the locker room dynamics in terms of how they're communicating on a day-to-day basis, but at the end of the day, this is a business, and I think it is a business move in terms of what the Broncos asked him to do. If you're not playing up to the standard, I know we signed the contract and the Broncos signed the contract, but ownership was new; they didn't have everything in place. I think they were trying to make a business move, and I don't see anything wrong with that. As a player, of course, I hate it because this is guaranteed money, and then also as a player, but from a different perspective, I think Russell Wilson, go out there and prove yourself again. All right, you guys want this injury guarantee, let me out of my contract, and now I'm going to go prove that you guys made a mistake. If he believes in himself and if he is who he say he is. So I did think that just from a leadership perspective, it was good to see tough conversations happen, and they're happening in real time. And it's not like Sean ran away from the decision he made. He went into his press conference the next day and had that conversation. So I appreciate tough moments and situations like that just because of the side that I'm sitting on now in terms of business. It's no different than private equity or venture. Sometimes tough decisions have to be made, and they're not always going to be fair.
Well, and the one thing to me that could have helped this entire situation, and I think is important for any leader, whenever you are a leader making a big decision and having a tough conversation, what part of it was your responsibility? I always think about Mike Tomlin. When I was at the Steelers, he always said, never minimize your role in a success or failure. And he says it every day. And I think to the media, and look, Sean Payton didn't have to tell the media what he'd done wrong or what he would have done differently, but I really do hope he had that conversation with Russ in terms of, hey, this is the situation, this is the decision we're making. Here are things I could have done better, and I look forward to you to being a great teammate here as we close out the season. We just didn't get any public recognition of things that were Sean's fault, and I don't know what they are. But you've had a friend in Draymond Green recently admit the fault in his behavior that led to his current situation. What do you make of the fact that Draymond recognized parts of his actions that have contributed to the situation he's now in?
Yeah, he's always a self-aware person, and I won't dive too much into this, but he's always been a self-aware person. He's always one to acknowledge in his actions and his accountability. And I saw it in his press conference when they welcomed him back in terms of, him taking the blame for the things and the situation that the team is in and that he is personally in. So it's always good to see people accept that their responsibility. I even saw Paul Feinbaum, the guy who does all the SEC stuff and does some work for ESPN, talk about he couldn't have been more wrong about Jim Harbaugh. And it was just good to see. It's good to see people own up to those type of things. And I think, in this situation, you want to see a Sean Payton own up to it. And I think he did a little bit in his exit interview where he said, he's made some mistakes and called some bad plays. But I think when the Russell Wilson thing and situation, I don't think he feels bad or he feels like he was in any wrong. And I've seen him make decisions like that. And I've seen him act like that in New Orleans. And I didn't think anything of it because he's one of the best coaches that I played for, one of the best leaders that I played for. He's really good at setting a culture and laying a foundation. And we saw the Broncos and we saw that roster, which had a lot of turnover from the previous year, play harder than they've ever played and finish games that they've never finished. So that has to do with coaching, and want to just acknowledge that. So,
well, and then we got another question here about transformation. And it said, the question is, you've played on the biggest stages, including Super Bowl 50. What insight can you offer to any emerging leader undergoing the transformation of how to show up and execute under the bright lights when it really matters? Go ahead, Bennie Fowler.
transformation. So playing on some of the biggest stages, when I think about playing in Super Bowl 50, what comes to mind just from this question is preparation. Are you prepared? When it comes to the Super Bowl, I mean, that's the 18th game of the season or 19th game of the season, depending on if you had a bye or not. Well, I guess maybe 24 or 25th, including preseason, which I had to play because I was undrafted. So
we do include preseason. Those are games. Yes.
Yes. So I would say when it comes to that, an emerging leader, are you prepared? Are you prepared? I'm actually taking a course right now in terms of getting better in terms of skill and high performance. And the guy, Craig Wortman, talks about knowledge, skill, and discipline and applying that. And that's how you become a high performer. So as an emerging leader, where is your knowledge level at? Where is it currently at? And then where do you want it to be? Where is your skill level at? How are you able to execute things? Where is it at? And then where do you want it to be? And then the discipline to get things done. Where is it at? And then where do you want it to be? And Ryan, you and I can talk about this all day. We can join an NFL team in the middle of the season, at the end of the season. Monday is a review day. It's always a review day. You go into the weight room, strength, run, flush your legs out from the game. Tuesday is always a day off. Wednesday is first and second down. Thursday is third down and red zone, strike zone area. Friday is a walkthrough and a fast Friday of everything. First, second, third down, red zone, special situations. And then Saturday, we're going to walk through that all again. And you repeat this process every single week, week. And you go into a meeting on Wednesdays, you get installed, and then you go out there and practice it. So you have the meeting, which is your knowledge. That's where we gain our knowledge. Then you go out to the practice field and you practice your skill. And then we have the discipline within terms of our schedule. And we repeat that process. So if an emerging leader wants to get better and wants to have transformation and show up and execute, where's your knowledge level at? How are you executing in terms of your skill? And then where's your discipline? Focusing on those things, I think, is super important. How do you see it, my good friend?
The first thing when you're performing in a big stage, you need no thing outside of yourself to be successful. This is a strong concept that I used throughout my entire career. It's something I got from the Book of Five Rings. A sword is only dangerous depending on who holds it, right? So as a leader, when you're into a new space, you don't need anything outside of yourself. And I love that you talk about knowledge, skill, and discipline, because what is your knowledge? I mean, yeah, if you're a new leader and you've done no work to prepare, it's going to go bad. We know this, right? If you don't build a house the right way, it's going to fall down, right? And in terms of kind of transforming and becoming a new leader, communication. As an offensive lineman, we are constantly talking before the snap. Even if it's to do nothing with the play to try and throw the defender off. But to me, what's shocking is how many people and how bad leaders and how average leaders rarely communicate. Hey, we're doing this. And you don't give an example of what it's going to help with. One of the things that I loved with Gary Kubiak and what I loved with some of the great coaches I played for, and Mike Tomlin and Mike Shanahan, they gave you the reason why we're doing this. At the Steelers, they say, we are here for one reason. And if you're not on board to do everything it takes to win a championship, take the door now because we'll show it to you later. What's the communication? What are you expecting of the people working around you? And how are you presenting a united front? So that's my big thing. When you're transforming into a new role, you need nothing outside of yourself. Bennie, when we were at the Super Bowl, you don't know this, but I used to always take omega-3s before games, and I always played better. It just was sharper. My mind was crisper. I could move quicker. When we got to the Super Bowl, I didn't have my omega-3s. And I remember having this moment in that locker. And I remember, Bennie, you remember too, the red carpet and the red on the – and I was sitting there like, how could this not be in my bag? Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I have everything I need within me to go succeed today. And the other thing, too, you have to understand it's not going to be perfect. It shocks me and frustrates me when people will say, well, I don't want to do this because I'm not ready yet, or I don't want to do this because it's not ready yet. Man, you better go. You better run. You better try. And it does not have to be perfect. To be successful, you have to be willing, not perfect. And so between knowing that there is no thing outside of yourself that is going to make you successful and knowing that you don't have to be perfect to be successful, those are two things that'll catapult you to where you want to go.
I love that saying, you have to be willing, not perfect, to be successful. You just have to be willing. You have to be willing to go out there, be willing to step out there, be willing to do the hard things. And then I also want to double click on communication, because you said Mike Shanahan talked about the communication piece. And it obviously has trickled down to his son, Kyle Shanahan, because when I had my brief stint with the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan said in training camp, everything can be fixed with communication. Everything can be fixed with communication. And he was talking about at the time, he was just talking about being on time. Hey, guys, we're not going to accept anybody being late to meetings, to the practice field. And if anybody wants to know, it's $15,000, $20,000 fine if you were late to meetings, practice. I actually remember somebody playing for free on Sunday. Kubiak said, hey, you're playing for free tomorrow, because he was late to a Saturday meeting. But Kyle Shanahan always talks about everything can be fixed with communication. And I think sometimes leaders, it's okay to over communicate. It is okay. It's okay to do that. Hey, over communicate. It's not micromanaging. Over communicate your standards and what you expect, the foundation, what's important. What is the standard? Sometimes leaders can go out there and just do it without saying anything, but it's great to over communicate. Peyton was like that, over communicating all the time, making sure everybody was on the same page.
Yeah, it's funny you said it about Peyton. I can still hear him hearing, and I don't know who he's talking to. You good? You good? Sometimes he'd be talking to us as a line after changing the play, but in the middle of the chaos, he would be like, you good? You good? That really helps. And the communication I learned as an offensive lineman in the NFL, I've brought to life after football. I over communicate to my wife and kids. Hey, we got this going on today. Yeah, we talked about it yesterday, Dad. Good, great. Glad we're on the same page, so that everybody understands. And it's the easiest thing to forget, because we think, hey, Benny's been in the room with me. He has to know it too. Maybe Benny had something going on or was distracted in that moment. Let's be clear on what we're doing here and what we're going to be doing in the future. And so I'm so thankful I was a lineman, because our job depends on communicating with 4 other people. And then I've been able to bring that to my life as a father, as, husband to 1 and father to 3. I got a group of 4 now. We're our own O-line, bro. We're ready to go, and we're aware of everything going on because of the communication.
Yeah, I want to just continue to harp on communication right now, just because I think it's just such an important topic. And yes, it's sometimes a buzzword and people always talk about it, but there's nothing wrong with continuing to talk about communication and the importance of it, because slant X spacing is the first place you install, first pass play you install in every training camp. And you install that play every single day for the rest of the year. So communication will never go away, and people talking about communication will never go away. And I know there are many different ways and forms of communication. And one of the things that I would love to ask you, and one of the things that I've seen, is that onboarding in companies is a communication tool that I think is not done very well. Talk to me about what you've seen in terms of the corporate world, in terms of onboarding and that type of communication, from standards to processes.
The number one mistake that leaders make is believing in the person that they're communicating to has the innate initiative themselves to complete the task. It can be a communication of, hey, I need this ready by Thursday. Well, what do you need ready by Thursday? Do you need a draft? Do you need a final revision? Do you need the beginnings? Do you need a brainstorming? Like, that's the incomplete attention to whether or not the person you're communicating to has the initiative to finish or has all the information to finish. That's the number one mistake I see leaders make when communicating. What do you see?
Yeah, I see the number one thing. I think everybody should just know, or, hey, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out as time goes on, which is one thing that is a pet peeve of mine, is that if I'm coming into a situation, or I am working with somebody who's coming into a situation, I'm trying to help them perform better. they're like, they're not up to standards. They're not performing. They don't have a high standard. No, they walked into the door and you didn't establish that the right way. When you walk into the
Mm-hmm.
Broncos facility, especially the Broncos facility, and then another one that stands out is the New York Giants facility. You walk right through the front doors. The first thing you see are the trophies. It's 5 Super Bowl trophies in New York. It's 3 in Denver. It was 2 before we won ours. You knew what the standard was. NFL does the best job, at least the teams that I've played for, in terms of onboarding you. Hey, here are the people you need to talk to. This is where you get your cleats. This is who you talk to in terms of travel. This is who will help you with finding a place to live. But here are all the people that you need to know throughout the entire organization. They walk you through that, regardless if you're there for a week or you're going to be there for the next 5, 10 years, whatever it may be. Everybody, the first round picks gets the same walkthrough as the undrafted guys. Now, he might get his on his own, and the undrafted guys will go in a group, but everybody gets to see what the standard is, and everybody gets onboarded the right way because they want you to play and perform at the highest level. That's why they have the staff there. And I think organizations and companies, especially in the startup world, because they are a startup, that's things that you can start developing right now. Is having people understand your standard, your values, and what does it look like to do this at the highest level, and who to talk to in the organization.
And I like what you say about what it looks like doing it at the highest level, because I was at a team, they didn't tell me where the meeting rooms were. They didn't tell me where the bathrooms were. So my first week at this team, they called me the wanderer because I literally didn't know what I was going, because they had handled the on-field stuff. But they're like, hey, meetings are at 3. I'm like, great, where is it? I have no idea where these meetings are. So even something little like the bathrooms are on your left, the meetings happen in this room, like that is key communication that will help the performance of your team.
1,000%. 1,000%. Question from Margie is, how do people lead better? She said Gallup has a poll, and they said the number one reason why people leave their job is because of their boss or their manager. So how do people lead teams better? Ryan, talk a little bit about some of the best leaders that you've played for and some of the characteristics that really stood out in terms of these leaders and how they led the teams.
Great leaders accept information from people throughout the organization. And bad leaders have no process for changing their opinion, viewpoint, or initiative based on the information from throughout the organization. And it's shocking to me how many times leaders, hey, it's Benny's fault. I told him he didn't get it. What? Well, maybe you told him, but how did you tell him? Did you scream it at him? Did you yell it at him? Did you walk him through the process? Did you ask him what he was thinking? Bad leaders cannot wait to say that it's not their problem, it's the problem with the staff. Great leaders say, okay, we have this problem on my team, on a team that I'm on. What's my role in helping to fix this problem? And great leaders listen to others, especially those who, as some of them are called, naive experts, people who are on the ground. I think about when we played against San Diego. Final game of the year, we won the Super Bowl. We needed to win that game to have home field advantage. And we were running the ball at a great clip, turning the ball over when we threw the ball. I went over to Gary Kubiak and said, hey, man, pull your head out of your tail and let's run the bleeping ball. Guess what we did? Ran for over 200 yards. That's a great leader. He was stuck in his book, stuck in his plan. He heard me speak to him, and he said, okay, let's do it. And we won the game. Like, that's a great leader to me. So when I talk to leaders who they're like, hey, I want to build a great team, I'm like, great, what's your process for being wrong? And all the time, Benny, they're like, what? Like, what is your process for being wrong? Or what's your process for dealing with new information from the experts who are actually doing it? And if you don't have an answer to those two questions, you cannot build an effective team. So, Bennie Fowler, when you think about the best leaders, what were things that they did to make a great team?
It's such a great question, and shout out to Margie for the question. I think when I think about leadership, number one thing I think about is my dad and leading teams at Ford. So when he was the COO of Jaguar and Land Rover, he was over there and they were losing a lot of money. And he went over there. I think they were losing $250 million, and in 2 years, $750 million profit. One of the key lessons that he always tells me and that he talks about is giving people the authority to fail. Giving people the authority to fail. And if you fail, we fail together. You do not fail alone. Like if you fail, then I'm failing with you, and we are all on the same page. And I think when you have a quick turnaround like that, is that you galvanize people to speak up in meetings, share ideas, give insight, give feedback. And my dad was over in London, so this is a totally different country. So they don't move and act like Americans. So I think that's one of the things that, and one of the best lessons that I took and I take from him in terms of when I'm talking to a leader is giving people the authority to fail. We are out there playing in football. The best coaches that I ever played for gave me a lot of freedom. Mm-hmm. They don't say, hey, when you get to 12 to 14 yards, you got to break down like this. It happened like that in college for me. You got to break down like this. And this is how the route has to be ran. Peyton, hey, be creative and get open. But I want you at 12 to 14 yards. How you get there doesn't matter. Just be ready to catch the ball. So I love that. And I love that you can give people the opportunity to be themselves and be creative in an organization. But people who want to lead teams, you have to lead yourself first. What are your values? What do you stand for? And then once you know your values as a leader, what are your team's values, your company's values? What are the examples of, those values being shown every single day? Do you have meetings to say, hey, these are our values and this is how I saw such and such execute this value this week? Or can somebody share how they've executed one of the core values on our team? Can somebody share a story in terms of how they use one of our core values as an example? And I think having leaders like that can create tremendous high performance. And if people are leaving their job because of their boss, not because of higher pay, but because of the boss, man, that's a reflection of leadership, number one. And then number two, leaders. Like, are you self-aware? I think the number one key attribute for the best leaders they're the most self-aware people, at least the best leaders that I've been around that are my friends and teammates and corporate professionals that I see. They're very aware. They're very aware people. Like, I got to do that better. Peyton was always good at that. I don't know if you would always hear him in the meeting room. He's like, that's on me. That's on me. He would always say that. He's just a very aware person. And I know we're talking about him a lot, but that's one of the best leaders that I've ever seen in real time and have leadership in real time. But yeah, I think values, you have to be able to just show up. You got to do the work. Leadership is not like one of these things where you take a course or you have the talk and then you stop. Your leadership is a constant. It's a mastery thing.
Yes.
It's a mastery thing. So,
well, thanks, brother.
Appreciate you, my brother. Thank you for coming on.